Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have two wonderful poets with us today, William Archila and Dennis Cruz. William will read first, and then Dennis. William Archila is the winner of the 2023 Philip Levine Prize for Poetry for his collection, capital S is for F-O-R. He is the author of The Art of Exile and the Gravedigger's Archaeology. He was awarded the 2023 Jack Hazard Fellowship. His work has appeared in Agni, APR, Copper Nickel, the Georgia Review, Kenyon Review, Prairie Schooner, Poetry Northwest, Pleiades, Triquarterly, and the anthologies Latino Poetry, the Library of American Anthology, the Breakbeat Poets, Volume 4, Last Next, and the Wandering Song, Central American Writing in the United States. He has worked forthcoming in Plowshares and New Ohio Review. He is an associate editor at Tiachucha Press. Here's a splendid poet, William Archila.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's great to be back. I've been looking forward to this hour with you and Dennis Cruz. I wanted to say a couple of things before I start about my new book, S is 4, which is this. You can see it there. There we go. If I put it in my face, maybe. Anyway, couldn't get it in there. It's basically an investigation of the Central American migrant crisis that came into focus around 2016. Still happening today, and it was happening before 2016. The book is also haunted by the past civil war, by the past of the civil war in El Salvador, and also the meaning of family spirits and the notion of what it means to lay down roots with your own dead in a new country. It's also about a new life in the U.S., a new inheritance, a new creation, a new invention of the self. I have about 8 sections in the book. I'm going to try to read from some of them. I'm going to start with the opening poem. Some of the sections are just like a one poem section, and this is one of them. This is what I call a disheveled sonnet, which means it's not a pure sonnet. Posting, boasting, 80 rounds from an officer, burning, looting. The life of a miner always leads to a line of corpses. Segregated schools, segregated hoods. Not enough money in the bank for representation, for a voice, for a commercial. Be mindful of Minutemen, pilgrims, unidentified men unhinged who donate money to all white men in suits executing laws. Take note of drug trafficking with the pistol of a teenage assassin. Pay attention to his invisible hoodie stitched to his head. Try to count backwards. Try days swollen and crack backwards. Try School of the Americas in Georgia. Try Atlacatel Battalion. Try City Hall. Try the coroner's law. Be vigilant of the government as the ghost of God, including Michelangelo and his cadavers. Also taking care of other people's babies, cry babies, and shit loaders, wiping, mopping. What else? What else makes you disappear? And so that poem introduces most of the themes in the collection. I have a lot of ekphrastic poems here, and I'm going to read 2 of those today. And by ekphrastic poetry, for those of you who might not know, it's just basically a poem based on a description of a painting, a painting that is well known to everybody in our society. So this is a poem that is speaking to a painting by Peter the Elder Bruegel. It's a painting titled "Landscape with the Fall of Icarus." And if you haven't seen that painting, it's basically like a classical painting of the bay. It's kind of green, and like green tones, and in the forefront there is the plowman, following his daily routine, and on the side is the fisherman doing his thing, and way in the background, and on the side actually, you see the two pale legs of Icarus falling into the water. There is several poems written about this painting, and two of those are by William Carlos Williams and W.H. Auden. And I wanted to take part of that conversation and sort of complicate the conversation at the same time. So this is called Beyond Bruegel's Shore. Somewhere in Nicaragua or Guatemala, it doesn't matter. His wings ache from so much wax, so much discord in his father's voice. How once he fled the words of the state through air and sky, so simple and so exact, he fell from the clouds. Yet no one cared, not the hospitals, not the impoverished, nor the imprisoned. For years, the diagrams of his nerves branched in confinement. And yet, he has began a new life, one of labor, of wife and children, his house asleep by the shore, a few cattle battering the fattening ground. But something has begun to crack, that dizzy spell of mist, that death sweeping over him, blaring in the dark, that thick, rough side of the sea. This time, he set up his gear because he had to, with no choice but to curse the coming waters. This time, he swooped so low he could finger the waves, dropped so low the foam soaked his hull of feathers. It's just a swell. He banished it all to the barn. The plowing goes on. But today in Central America, it does matter. Another boy fell from the sky, chicken fluff and all. Body tangle, indeed body tangle. And there was no one around. All right. Let me read something more depressing now. So I'm moving on to the next section that is haunted by the Civil War in El Salvador. And this is, like I said earlier, is an ekphrastic poem. It is inspired by Francisco Goya. In his later years, he became more of an imaginative painter, and he developed this series of paintings that are now known as the Black paintings. And this poem is based on the one that's titled Saturn Devours His Children. And this is where the title of the book comes from. S is for. And I use Saturn as a metaphor for El Salvador in the way that El Salvador devours its own citizens. Saturn's country. S for salt, for spoiling crops. S for worse or no choice other than exodus or a territorial discourse. S for stretched out in the morgue, plastic bags like garbage you discard. S for ES, which is S, which is Senor of 1,000 choruses. S for stinking hog, onions, frenetic maggots laying their baggage. S for still your flesh, meat butcher, bootleg in the marketplace. S, some might say, your gas slosh from a tank. Others, that first blew God doused on a tarp, hated it and left it to rot. Or you're that sound he loves so much, smaller than a cricket song. S for sculpt, for the soiled search of your God. S for complete utter darkness. S for success out of the carcass. S for sloth, for sickle, for a solar system beyond sable incarceration. S for savior, for scavengers and sculptors you throw out of the temple. S for so much white noise pressure, even the cardinal won't canonize you. No, not that bird, not that pontiff, nor your arsenal. S for still to this day in your belly, in the dive of your mouth. All right. Moving on to a new section here, skipping on invisibility and moving on to the family spirits section of the book. I want to read two from that section, and this one is for my mother-in-law, Sevat Bedikian, who passed away in 2020. I think what you might need to know about this poem is that in Greek mythology, Polynesius and Ethiocles, there were twin brothers who fought for the throne of Thebes. They fought over the throne of Thebes after the death of their father Oedipus. When I think of Aleppo, for Sevar Bedikian, 1937, 2020. I too lived the war, but I don't think I necessarily have to like the alternative for permanent residence. There are ways to be cursed when a brother ends up in a rival gang, and you must throw down because the feud is on. The way of Polynesius and Ethiopius. It's complicated. The way I associate my mother-in-law with Aleppo, or the photo of two Syrian boys sitting in rubble. One torn sweater arm over the other's shoulder. 2 years older than my sons, asleep in the darkness of another siren. I think more and more in parallels now, because there's a feeling in me that outlives my way of thinking. How do I articulate to the boys, stop shoveling, it's time to go. Time to drop the front loaders, stop shouting at each other. I think of the Syrian boys, as if my thinking can restore their bodies. What it is the insignificant feeling of a span much too short. And what would I do if it comes taking everything sweet as dirt? To feel all night birds flooding over the sky, to murder the smudge of stars? Not now, not ever. Not for another barrel bomb will I contribute to your faceless justice. This is what makes my body hum at night, to elevate that which is broken, bone and tendon, assembling the body out of fragments. This is to say, I got my boys going down the slide, the way they pick their small bodies off the grass is an accomplishment. I can't tell you how many times I have lied for the sake of making logic work, believing I'm all right, that I can stomach another grave. It's so simple, so obvious, but I go on blind to the war, like that fool Oedipus who concludes that all is well. All right. And so for this poem, next poem, This Field of Weeds and Wildflowers, I like to say to my audience that there is a big vapor rub jar in this poem. So that should give you a hint that this is about my grandmother, Mama Chocha. This field of weeds and wildflowers. If I were a painter, I start with blue, the color field, as in Sonny Rollins' Colossus, as in Rubén Darío's Azul, shelve it. If this were a landscape thick over thin, intended or less ornate in a volcano, I say blue like the midday sky or the midday heart. All the birds in Central America, madcap. If I had a choice, this oil, this water, this lank tool I fool in my fingers, I say the theatrical blue flame in a gas stove, like the black and blue on my torso, the enormity of it, the batons and asphalt in blue uniforms. This big vapor of jar clad on my grandmother's bedside, this asteroid snug fit in a gravesite, darker than soot, darker than the coiled look of feathered things. Her morning walk, her morning song, down the hallway, the mud, the match when she joined the landscape of birds. This field of weeds and wildflowers. Let me brush my hand over the canvas, like in a mirror, how faithful the camphor, her eucalyptus, her mint. I sniff and smear on my nostrils. All the blood tint, this cold blue pigment, all the ink blue as a painter who wipes stained fingers on her apron. City of. City of ghosts, city of dead cars, city of nod to the songs that say blah, blah, blah. Is this what I get when my father's dead? Is this what I get when I'm lonely in my veins? I don't feel like watching TV or listening to the stereo set. My heart downtown has nowhere to go except where the dead reside. Suddenly, the choreography of bodies sleeping in tents by the lake. Some Angelinos, some illegal. What it's like to shake with an ashtray's click of cigarettes. Now tell me, doesn't the desert eat unless daylight is winding down like a siren? Lawmakers smell of cash because they eat cash, says my father, while I grow old and nocturnal. Inside the eloquent darkness, the blue comes out in the dirt. I don't know what the worms do inside the earth. I don't know why I'm more tired than a dog revice in a graveyard. Tired of American Gothic, gentrified, disgusted by plastic, by the gutting of carcasses, where others have gone off to praise the four black, shiny SUVs parked in the driveways. I have deserted to the streets, deserted to the odes and elegies. It's strange to think beyond that window, another exile is probably thinking the same as me. You can find almost anything. City of cocktails, city of cops, city of carnations crush, and taco trucks. I'm gonna clear my throat and read one more poem. And this is sort of like the one more poem. Yeah. The ending of the book is the last poem. Again, it's another single poem section. And here is where the speaker faces his own doppelganger, who has haunted him from the beginning section of the book, since the unaccompanied minors appear in the opening pages. So this is called Double. And I want to thank you for your time, and thank you for your attention, and thank you for listening. Double. There used to be a Salvadorian boy inside this body. And if this isn't enough, he has come back to tell me it's impossible to get rid of him. Like the year his father split when he was 9, stranded in the outskirts of some fictitious town with nowhere to go, nothing to do, no friends or relatives to bring him back. And if this isn't enough, his thoughts walk me back to the year when I was a wheel. Another late night talk, and I'm another man, younger, in love with the landscape I used to know, knows me still, which is to say, I'm still here in the dark, melancholic, drunk on cane vodka and no village drunk. It is not the cold north that makes him feel colder, not the wet grass doubled in mud that makes him stiff. It's my aspiration to retreat higher and higher to the mountains. The fact that I have not listened to a word he has said that makes him feel like a lonely song. Has it always been like this? Most nights it's quiet. Others, the muffled sounds of a conversation next door. Ours could be heard upstairs, out there, in my neighbor's ear pressed to the wall. It's a nocturnal thing. And I wanted so much of this to be two insomniacs in love, with the hole they can't possibly fill, but carry nonetheless, like a patron saint to have when they need a little happiness. Thank you so much.
Thank you, William. Your narrative just sings of humanity, compassion. You know, some of the themes are family, country, immigration, as you stated, and you're also it's just a very poignant poetry that you write, and it's always authentic. And the humanity within it is just really astounding. So thank you for that. When you began to write S is For, did you have any particular themes in mind? And did you know the form it was going to take, or did you discover this as you went along your way?
That's a great question. You know, I don't plan what I'm going to write about. I just sit down and write without thinking, okay, this poem is going to be on my immigration, or that poem is going to be on my family. But I did think that this was going to be, excuse me, that this is going to be different than the first two books in terms of its linguistic quality. My first two books were very, very narrative-like. And this book attempts to deviate from that and to take more time around an image, to have more declarative sentences, and play more with sonic structure. So I was taking more the freedom of making decisions like an artist, as opposed to making decisions as someone who has learned a craft in a classroom and trying to employ that. So that was the difference with this book. But the book is still very loyal to the themes that I had in the first two books, exile, immigration, the Civil War in El Salvador. But there are new forms in this book. Like I said, I took a crack at writing disheveled sonnets, which actually the poem I read at the beginning was not supposed to be part of this book. It is part of my new manuscript. But then I realized I didn't have a strong poem for SS4 to open it up. And that poem includes all the themes that I'm working with. So I thought, that's perfect for this book. So I got a sonnet, I got ekphrastic poems, I got a sestina, a lot of lyrical poems as well, and other stuff, elegies. So it is a deviation from the last two in terms of a linguistic aspirations, but it's still loyal to the same thing that I have done in the past.
Well, and also the poem that you read on Bruegel's painting, that painting is a lesson in poetry and acting. You have a myth, but then as the Icarus is falling, you see the people down on the ground selling product, going on their way to catch a boat. They're doing everyday things. They're not, because, if you say you act in a classical play, you can't play the myth. You still have to speak just the way we're speaking now, down to earth, right? And so I've always loved that. And I love the way you treated it. Well, you're a marvelous poet, William, and there's really an acute sensitivity in your handling of family and country, and as you mentioned, exile, and an epic includes history, and so you're including history in your writing. It's not only personal, but it is larger than the personal, which is fabulous. So thank you once again, William Archila, for such a marvelous reading. It's always such a treat to hear what you're working on, and congratulations once again for winning the Philip Levine Poetry Prize. That's a real honor. So thank you, William Archila. And now Dennis Cruz. Dennis Cruz is a vital poet who inhabits the voice of the perpetual outsider and the purely American dissident. He has been writing, performing, and publishing his work for over 30 years. His latest collection of poetry, The Beast Is We, is out now from Punk Hostage Press. Here's a superb poet, Dennis Cruz.
Well, thanks a lot, Harry. Like you said, this is from my latest collection, The Beast Is We. And this first poem is called Sacred Dark. Smoking, pulling in the sickness, a tiny respite from obey or else. Silent in respect of what precious words remain. My caged beast singing a sickening blues. Roaches scuttling, eyes looking out the dark ape caves of my remembering. And you, with your cadaver catheter smile. You with your costume delivery and casket charm. Taunting, luring, and condemning as always. Your eyes glinting with lineage. Years of looking away, looking in. My eyes closing to sacred dark. Seating myself there. Growing someone there. This one is called Topical. The specter of death smiling, Cleopatra uncrossing her legs. Just a small glimpse into the infinite, then it's over. A bad dream lingering like egg yolk or menstrual blood on your tongue. I wonder what the apostles imagined when they masturbated. I wonder if they were dreamt up guilty and shameful like everyone else. Perhaps. I wonder if husbands that stone their wives to death hurl their stones with secret erections, zealots rolling in the ecstasy of prayer. I wonder what they see up there. Knowing starlight is just as dead as my mother's body or my father's soul, perception cursed by wisdom is a heavy burden, like love to a prostitute or epiphany to a priest. But brutality can never be denied its beauty, and innocence is nothing, if not made to lose. When the dogs howl in the winter night, we assume it's the cold. We assume they're suffering, but what if it's a primal ecstasy we subconsciously envy? The specter of death snickering. A gym coach pedophile ordering his boys to shower. The dark years, the dark times, the dark eras, the dark and the dark and the dark since time immemorial, since before we could speak. And it's still all we talk about. This one I wrote for my father. It's called Patience. Lying awake at night, 10, 12, 14 years old, wondering how I would do it, how I would kill him. Not just for me, but also for the principal. And although it was not about revenge, I still felt a pull to balance things, a necessary eradication for which I was obliged. Sure, there was hatred, but it was bigger than that. A vague genetic impulse I didn't need to understand. Hours spent watching him, drinking coffee, cutting meat, licking grease off of his fingers. I was fascinated. I pictured him entering my mother, whispering in her ear, telling her how beautiful she was. I pictured his face the first time he hit her, the first time he hit me. But it was no longer anger that brought these thoughts to my mind, but rather a calm curiosity. The way you watch an alligator in the zoo, hoping it will move, afraid that it will. All my life, for as long as I can remember, whenever I was near him, there was always something that passed between us. A simmering resentment, a secret challenge. As if I had been the hammer that nailed him to his miserable life. The hammer he never saw coming. Watching him, aching for a reciprocation. A valve to finally release the hatred he had for both of us. I was aching for it too. It would be another 40 years before I finally understood why I never did it. Why I stopped wanting to. I was just too young to understand. It was never meant for me to do. Life would have to. I was just impatient. But now, as the years get closer and we both get older, I can just ease into it. Relax. Wait for the phone to ring. This one is called Bin Blood. I warned you. Remember the daffodils? The little girl that was assaulted? The one no one believed? Hysteria, I told you this would happen. The night of sudden mescaline, the night of too many baggies pulled out of your purse. Curandera, the nights have been getting strange. Remember the story I told you about that thing that happened when I was little? I didn't tell you all of it. ¿Te acuerdas? The ghosts have so many stories. The dead won't lay still. A trumpet calling the street to attention. Tio, I remember your sweet Camaro. You, Tio, you remember that? You remember me? Pandora, don't forget you carry all of me that's left. Vomit glittering on the sidewalk, something that looked like blood, something that could have been blood, making shapes, symbols. A love letter slanged and pushing up against my eyelids. Tia, I'm sorry I couldn't follow you to Christ. It's not that I don't believe, I just believe in more. Papa, remember when you said a father shouldn't have to call his son? What the fuck was that? The phone on the table, a silent accusation. Papa, I'm telling you, it wasn't my fault. It was yours. Okay, this one is called Ours. When did we deform, become this daily horror, with death in our eyes and someone else's blood on our hands? Lost legs stumbling in the terrible to and fro of our meaningless lives. Work, TV, sleep, weekend. Over and over with carnage and tragedy all around us, encroaching upon our minds, anesthetized to cruelty. Perhaps a kind of sleep has done us in. Perhaps the quiet lull of rest has closed our eyes and deadened our hearts. So much is dangerous to be open to, toiling beneath the waves of our souls, lost and frightened, consumed by regret and vapid preoccupations. We used to be so brave. Wait. No, we didn't. The short poem called Where. Down the barrel or the ladder, near the eye and beneath my father's belt, found there among the ruins, spotted 2 miles west of the accident site. An open invitation laying down amidst the clutter of coupons. Panties on the floor, bra hanging next to a moldy towel in the bathroom. In the eye of a dirty needle, a blood stain on the cleaver. Chicken parts burning in the freezer. There, right there. This one is called Residence. You don't always remember the details, what day of the week, what year, how old you were exactly, but you remember the flush of heat on your face. You remember the fear, humiliation, panic, the inevitable rage. It's curious what stays with you and what fades. It's curious how trauma and violence always resonate louder than tenderness or love. Perhaps that's why he hit me so hard. This one is called Ordinary. A crowd had gathered at the base of the building. A woman had crawled out onto a window washer scaffolding. She must have been at least 24 stories up. She was dressed in an old dirty nightgown and she was screaming and cackling this terrible manic laugh. Though I couldn't hear what she was saying, she was obviously hurling insults down to the curious group of people down below. She had this crazy hair that was billowing around her face. There was something wrong with her face. Her mouth was covered in a dark ring that looked like charcoal or old blood. After some time, the crowd began to lose patience and began yelling at her. Why don't you just jump, you crazy bitch? Yeah, jump. And soon it became a chant. Jump, jump, jump. And then suddenly I was angry with her too. Who does she think she was, freaking out up there, making a scene and fucking with the morning traffic? I was tired of it. Why didn't she just jump? Just jump and get it over with already. What a fucking coward. Frustrated, I decided to join in on the chant and angrily yelled up, jump! And just like that, she did. She fucking leapt out of that scaffolding and came flying down at us. At me. Arms flailing, legs kicking. She was still screaming and laughing. About halfway down, I could just make out what she was saying. Don't leave me. And that's when I realized it was my mother. And she was looking right at me with tears streaming down the sides of her face. And then she hit the ground and split my heart wide open. I woke up screaming with tears running down my face. It was the worst nightmare I had ever had. I don't know how or why, but I knew then she would kill herself one day. And then 10 years later, she did. And it was otherwise just another ordinary day. Like today. This one is called Post-Genesis. The lines are drawn long before we are born. Centuries of twisted sheets and grunted couplings. We are but the outcome of semi-sentient co-conspirators that never considered their flawed legacy, its generations of influence, or the lineage of its pain. And what we take and bestow from the cradle to the grave is ultimately what defines us, who we are building and growing, all the while our minds fussing over everything and everyone else. This one is called Older Than Me. Like a body purging waste and urine, I wait for nature to rid me of all my worry. A process older than me, sure to do what needs to be done. Dreaming of disease, a collection of cells dying. The street beneath my feet melting and swallowing me whole. Muted screams reaching no one. Last words choking in my throat. Not surviving, my shallow breathing a death hymn of defeat and surrender. One day my eyes will open to a world of no remaining. Nothing familiar, no recognition, and I can't imagine anything worse. A cacophony of nothing. And then my eyes will close and never open again. And what will I see then? Perhaps it'll be you again. This one is called Never Forget. Smile because you're dead. Smile because you recognized all the voices in your head. Smile because everyone is suffering and it's good to know that it's not just you. Smile because you lost her the moment you met. Smile because she's a pain you'll never forget. Smile because the parade is for you and the song of the marching band is yours. Smile now because your time is through. Everything is done. There's finally nothing left to do. This one is called In That Moment. A cluster of needs spilling blood into the vast well of all my restless thinking. There amidst the writhing ghosts of long gone loves that never reciprocated, the desperate hope I suffocated them with. Me with my head sewers, ascribing death and decay to every breathing moment. A flood of fear welling in my chest, with a library of books offering no solace, only confirmation that my terrors are real and necessary. And it's not death I run from in all those terrible dreams. It's not the other side that has me weeping in one used car after another. I know I believe in some form that death will be a kind release, but it's the act of dying that's worrisome. Knowing in that moment that you're leaving everything and everyone you love, everything and everyone that you've ever been. In that moment, knowing you're never coming back. This one's for my dad as well. It's called Free of You. My little fingers in your big mouth, your ideas shining bad light into my gaping head. I look up at you one last time, but I've grown and you're beneath me now, so much smaller than I remember. And this is how I want to remember you. small and sad and wondering where all your stature went. One more, Harry? I'm going to read this one last prose piece called Necessary Consequence. I wake up in a strange room. The curtains are drawn and I can't tell what time it is, though I sense it's either very early or very late. I realize I'm in a dingy motel and I wonder where I've left the drugs. Probably on the table. I look for a table, but the room is long and there's another room just around the far wall. This frightens me. I know my mother is in that room. I get up off the bed and walk over, hoping to find nothing. I find myself walking down a long hallway I don't remember seeing. The closer I get to the next room, the brighter the light becomes, and soon it's burning my eyes and I consider turning back. I don't think I want to see what's in there anymore, but I keep walking, suddenly noticing I'm not wearing any shoes or pants. Finally, I turn the corner and enter the brightly lit room, and it's a hospital room. My mother's lying naked on what looks like an examination table. There are numerous electrodes and clamps fastened to her skin, and she is screaming. Standing around her are 5 doctors wearing face masks and holding clipboards. One of them motions for me to not come any closer, and I begin to weep. Don't worry, one of them says to me, the pain she is in is a necessary consequence of her actions. All this is necessary. I nod to signal that I understand, and I keep a healthy distance. One of the doctors, the only female, lifts a slender-looking cattle prod and begins to shock my mother. Her body bucks and writhes, and she screams louder, her eyes locking with mine, pleading as if to say, why are you letting them do this to me? And the pain I experience is visceral and immense. This is not your pain, says one of the doctors. It would not be appropriate for you to take it from her. She has earned it, and it is not yours to feel. This comforts me, and a warm indifference begins to settle in. And suddenly I feel calmer than I felt in years. I watch the doctors with a curious detachment. They really start to work her over, cutting her with scalpels and pinching her with clamps and shocking her with small white rods. Her screams begin to muffle and fade as if sucked into a vacuum, and this also comforts me. I decide it's time to make my way back to the table and find my drugs. I can't even remember what kind I'm on exactly, but I suspect crystal meth. And sure enough, there's an open baggie on the table with 2 sloppily cut up lines lying next to a $5 bill rolled up into a straw. The bill has had time to stretch, and it looks ridiculously fat and comical. I can feel myself smiling as I reach for it, wondering if I should tighten it up or maybe just try to flare my nostrils big enough to accommodate its current size. I tighten it up and snort both rails, one in each nostril, and take a moment to drink in the miraculous burn. Holy fuck, it hurts so good. I consider praying and mumbling something up into the light of the floor lamp. I find a smashed pack of cigarettes and fish one out. Lighting it with some matches I find oddly familiar. Taking a long drag, I wonder if maybe my mom might want one. But I then remember she quit smoking several years ago. Besides, she's got other shit going on. I figure I've got everything I need just standing there, smoking, watching the smoke curl up in the air. This one's called Tryouts. Julian. Man, you gotta come over here. I got a whore over here. You gotta see this, man. You could fuck her if you want to. Seriously. She's gonna be my whore. I went over there, and sure enough, there was a naked white girl on his bed. Julian. Go on, man. Go fuck her, man. She's ready. So I did. I went over there to fuck her. She took me into the bathroom and leaned up against the sink, facing the mirror and kind of trying to lift her ass so I could, get in there. I tried a few times, but I just couldn't get it in there. I tried talking to her, but she wouldn't speak. And that really fucked it up for me somehow. I pulled up my pants and I got out of there. Julian, did you fuck her? I told you, man. She's going to be my whore. She's down to fuck, man. I just nodded and left. This one's called First. You can never experience something for the first time twice, like smoking crack or getting a permanent marker shoved up your ass when you're 8. These are special memories, and no one can take them from you. They are yours to keep. Cherish them. This one is called Pedestal Grave. A sharp knife for the serious cutting, an elegant pen for the grace incision. Your eyes smiling at my slut face, beautiful. Looking back, a pure self revealed, atrophied and scarred, a rat's embryo floating in a jar. Understand that it's you because you laid your eyes on me when you should have looked away. I understand you don't see things my way, but you should understand there isn't another. Not for you. Not tonight. Good night, Mom. I wanted to ask you about your suicide, but it happened so fast, there wasn't enough time to ask you why you did it. There wasn't enough left of you to question, and you didn't leave me any answers. No matter, I'm sure you had your reasons. I just wish I knew what they were. Not that that would have made any difference. Good night, Mom. I hope you found what you were looking for. I haven't. This one is called Gnosis Lurking. Approaching. Cautious. Faith fermenting. Souring. Holy canon leaning. Toxic. An inner crouching. Something vital to apprehend. Something needing its own death. Investigating multiple outcomes. Infinite scenarios and parallel positions behind the veil. And there, just behind the soft periphery, Hermes laughing beneath the seams, finding myself suddenly laughing too. For now I understand, if only just for now.
Dennis.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for your prayers of transcendence, dealing with pain, violence, family. I mean, they're deeply touching. They're personal. They're honest. And the reason I came in, we just have a couple minutes left. So I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions. When did you write your first poem?
I can mark it to the day. It was the day after my 21st birthday.
And then who are some of the poets that influenced you before you started writing poetry in a regular, serious way?
I can't say that I read very much poetry before I started writing poetry. It came along as a kind of an aftermath of a very wild birthday party for my 21st birthday. And a friend of mine kind of introduced me to the work of Jim Morrison and the Doors, but not just the regular songs. He had made a tape that interspersed a lot of the poetry that he had that had been recorded kind of posthumously by Jim Morrison. And I had never really heard poetry before, at least not that, just, the kind that you're read in school. But it really touched me, and it really kind of opened something up in me in the way I thought about just how you can articulate an experience and maybe even reflect back on old experiences through poetry. I felt like I had understood, been given this secret language in which to experience things a little bit more acutely than I thought possible before with words.
Well, thank you very much for a splendid reading. You're dealing with subjects that are very deep, and you dealt with them the best way you can, and you touched us all with your reading. They're emotional, they're personal, they're authentic. So thank you. Usually we have a time to take a couple of minutes for each other's poetry. Why don't you each just take like 30 seconds and just say something about the other poet's poetry? And just remember, 30 seconds each. William on Dennis, and then Dennis on William before we leave.
Well, I just want to thank Dennis for sharing his work. It's funny that he mentioned Jim Morrison because I was thinking a lot about Jim Morrison as you were reading your poetry, and I kept thinking that was actually a not only a singer or poet. I think they call him the electric poet. I think that I came across in during my high school years, but that it is one of those poets that sort of gets under your skin and makes you want to write. I do remember myself writing when listening to his music, but I wasn't at that moment. I was just just scribbles, right? Scribble here and there.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you to Dennis for bringing that up. That was a great journey, memory lane.
Dennis, just very quickly, because we have to go on. There's a new show that starts right now, but take just 20 or 30 seconds and briefly say what you would like about William's poetry.
Well, I really liked the feeling of familiarity that I got in the kind of narrative style of the poems, and it was very kind of warm to hear kind of a Latino voice that doesn't seem to be too steeped in just being a Latino writer, but actually speaking more from personal experience, and very relatable to me as I'm from Costa Rica. And it's just always great to hear voices that have a sense of their own individuality and personality that shines through, and not just being, kind of a cultural reporter, but an actual deep and sensitive writer of their own experience. And I thought it was very, very well crafted.
Thank you very much, Dennis Cruz and William Archila. Our next poetry next Tuesday, we have two wonderful poets with us, Melissa Stoddard and Lois P. Jones. And here's our wonderful director, Jennifer Clymer, to take us to our next program, Cinephiles.
Wow, what an hour. Thank you so much. Oh, and we lost, oh no, Dennis is already gone. I just wanted to say thanks. Thanks to both of you for being on, and hopefully we see you again soon.